Okay.
Okay, so I because when they said like it had to be something that was reflective of the like students you were going to be teaching, I did it in where my sister works, which is in Baltimore, and like she works at a charter school. So I did it in Baltimore, Maryland, where she works basically.
Okay.
So I actually visit there a lot, but I went there this past week just to visit her and help out at her school. So I kind of just walked around the area, and it's so weird because it's like in Baltimore, Maryland, but when you go to Baltimore, there's like the Inner Harbor, which is where like everything is, and like it's a huge like city life. And then when you go to where the school is, it's like kind of like a more secluded area. And so it was like weird seeing like that difference. And also Baltimore, like it's not the best place. I think when my sister was telling me, it's like kind of the second most dangerous city.
Oh, wow.
So when I was walking around, it was just like weird seeing like the drastic changes like in each neighborhood. And there are also parts of Baltimore where it's just completely abandoned, like because they couldn't afford their houses and like they had to leave. And like there's just parts of Baltimore that are completely abandoned. So I kind of like did like one giant tour of Baltimore. But she works at this charter school, and it's like this really huge charter school. And it's like in the front, it's like elementary school. And then in the back, it's like middle school.
Oh, okay.
And so like I took a tour around there, and they have like a community playground right there. And so a bunch of people from the neighborhood will come and play basketball there. But then like during the day, like when the kids are in school, they'll kind of just reserve it for the kids. And
So
it's
the
like,
school uses the community basketball? Okay.
yeah, they use it for themselves, and they kind of like share space with the community. But like after hours, like the community is welcome to use it. And it's kind of like like the school tries to keep it like manageable, but like sometimes like the community doesn't take the best care of it.
Okay.
But it was like really interesting just because like kids either walk or get dropped off or have to take the bus. But like it's just like such a drastic change because it'll go from like really nice buildings and city life and like a bunch of restaurants, and then it gets like more secluded, like a bunch of like trees, and it's really nice. But then you become more aware of like how much these kids like have to walk through, like they have to walk through like a wooded area. If they're walking, they walk through like a heavily wooded area. And like because like the way it's set up, it's like a secluded area, and then like if they take the bus, they get dropped off, or they could walk. But the thing about my sister's school is like she'll have people set up so that if they need to meet them, they'll meet them at a certain location and walk.
Okay.
But it's just like weird, like the drastic changes. And I thought about like how at the charter school, because we're both teaching in Wilmington, right?
Yeah.
So like I was just thinking about it, and I was like, you know, charter schools are different than like public like schools. And I was just like looking at the differences and how much resources they set up for their students.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really interesting just because like I think Baltimore is like one of those really like social, like fun places to be. But when you really look at it, it's like such a different, like each neighborhood is like such a difference between like economic backgrounds.
Do you know which neighborhood you were in?
Well, it's like Baltimore, but where it was like, it like was in the city, but the address was like Greenfield. Like that's where it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to include a map in the presentation. That way, like you can have a better visual of it. Cause it's all in Baltimore. It's just like, there's like it's because Baltimore is such a big city. So it's like a little subset in it.
Mm-hmm. That's what my neighborhood was too. It's like Germantown is this like Philadelphia is my whole hand. Germantown is like this section here.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like not even close to a big part of the city, but like it's a significantly sized neighborhood. It's just that Philadelphia is so big that you can't really like tour the entire city in one day ever.
Yeah.
So
Philadelphia is like really nice. And I know it's like a really, like, it's a really big like area and stuff.
yeah, it definitely is. But yeah, I had some of the same like realizations on my walk as well. Like, I walked around with my dad. First of all, my dad wouldn't let me walk by myself
Yeah.
because he's like, "No, you're gonna get beat up or abducted." Because like the neighbor, my dad owns two houses in Germantown,
Mm-hmm.
and the one house he's currently working on, the other house he's already finished up and has been renting out to this lady for like 6 years. And her niece was abducted like 3 weeks ago and was just found like a couple weeks ago. which was good that she was found, but like it was right around the corner from this house. So my dad was like, yeah, you're not walking around by yourself, even though it was like broad daylight and that was fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was interesting that you would go from like one, like it's really close to Center City, but it's like far enough out that it's not the nice part of the city.
Yeah.
And it has like such a deep history. Like Germantown was built by the German Mennonites and Quakers that came from like Germany, which is why it's called Germantown.
Hmm.
And they like came with this like peaceful pacifist like mentality. So that's where like all of these like anti-slavery and like abolitionist meetings were held. And it has like the Battle of Germantown is one of their like proudest moments, even though we lost that battle. So I'm not sure why they're proud of that one. It was like a battle with like 7 American troops versus like 100 British troops. So like we didn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, like they're really proud of the history that they have, and like the Historical Society of Germantown is like really proud of everything that they've done and like to preserve the history. But at the same time, like they ignore the present issues.
Okay.
So like there's a lot of poverty in Germantown today. Most of the like older homes are were turned into apartments and like are completely run down nowadays. And like the ones that are part of the historical society are really, really nice. And
Hmm.
like you can't touch anything inside the house. And
Wow.
like you have to go on a guided tour of the entire property. Like you can't be by yourself in these nice homes. But the other houses they just don't care about. And like it's all Section 8 housing, and like my dad rents to Section 8 people because like that's who lives in the area nowadays. But then like 2 blocks over, you're in like the super nice, like really expensive homes that no one can afford to buy or rent because they don't want to live in Germantown if they have that kind of money. But at the same time, like you can't just give these homes away for free because they're like historical homes that are really nice and well built. So it's like a tricky situation for the housing authority to be in, but they like haven't figured out a good way to do it yet. Um, Also, Germantown Friends School is there, and it's this like super super nice school. Like we walked by it and it was like, wow, this is a really nice building. And my dad's like, yeah, that's the fine arts building. And I'm like, that's just the fine arts building. Like it was bigger than the middle school that we passed, and it was like one building in the school. Like most schools in the city don't even have fine arts anymore.
Yeah.
And this school has this like ginormous building devoted to like teaching kindergartners to sing the ABCs. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's so weird. Yeah. That's interesting though.
And like this, I looked at some of the videos on their website because I was like doing research for it, and like the videos that they have are like these really cute like Waldorf school kind of videos, like very like free spirit hippie-ish videos of their kids like doing whatever and like roaming free. But you can see all the security guards standing around the edges, like with their arms crossed, like staring out into the neighborhood, like don't touch these kids. They're like rich kids from outside the city.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It was weird and kind of uncomfortable to like notice that, like the security guards in the playground area with the kids.
Yeah. That's so weird. I guess because it's like, is it like a safe neighborhood or like?
No.
Oh, so that's why they have the security guards and stuff.
Yeah, like kids don't walk to school there.
Oh.
Everyone gets dropped off at their school, and like you can't drive during school drop off hours because there's just like lines of cars backed up driving their kids like 2 blocks to school
Yeah.
because they don't trust their kids to walk.
Wow. That's such like that's good that they take that like that amount of like measures like just to make sure that their kids are safe. Like I know from my sister's school because her school is Harmony Academy, and but the thing is like because it's not a safe neighborhood, like she's always worried about her kids, but because the people that send her kids to her school, they're all like very protective of the staff there. So
Mhm.
they're always like, we protect you, we'll protect these kids because they're part of our community. So it's like kind of a safe zone because like no one's going to mess with the kids and no one's going to mess with the teachers because like they're all like doing their best to like protect the kids and give them a good education. So it's like weird seeing that difference because like I know that when the riots happened, like one of the big riots that happened in Baltimore,
Mhm.
my sister, like they had to shut down school because they didn't want their kids, because a lot of kids take the bus. And one of the places where the riots were happening was like at a mall, and like one of the buses stops at like a hub station where like they connect with other main buses, and that's was connected to the mall, and like that's where a lot of like the looting was happening.
Mhm.
My sister's like, I can't send these kids home, and I can't like have them here when this is happening. So she like had parents come pick them up, and then the next day like they didn't have school. But then like she called each parent, and like each parent was like, okay, we don't want our kids going into school because like we don't feel like it's safe, but we know that if they're in your school and they're in your hands, like they're not going to be in any danger. So it's like weird noticing, because like it's not a safe neighborhood, but I think because everyone values like the work they do in the school and like knows that the kids really need this education, like they don't, it's like the very protected area by the community.
Yeah, my friend actually was a teacher in DC, and like in a rough neighborhood in DC, and she like the first couple weeks that she worked there, her car got broken into like every other day. And then after everyone realized that it was her car and that she was like a teacher at the school, they stopped breaking into her car. And people would be like, "No, don't touch her car. She's one of the teachers. She's here. She's like helping us." Like, and they like took care of her because they realized that she was part of the community then. But like the first couple weeks when she wasn't really affiliated into the community, she like didn't get any of that protection.
Yeah. But that's so, I guess like that's kind of neat though, like the extent the community will go to kind of just protect their kids and protect their kids' education and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really cool. And I think like even though there was the security guards, the fact like they had such a huge building just for like the fine arts kind of just shows how much effort they put into education.
Yeah, one of the things that bothered me though about GFS was that they have what they call the Community Outreach Scholarship,
Mhm.
or the Community Scholars Fund, and out of the 865 students that they have, 17 of them are from the community.
Wow.
That's it.
That's,
Like,
yeah.
like they say, like we have this great scholarship opportunity, but then I was looking at the requirements for it, and you have to have like a B plus average or better from 5th to 8th grade. You have to go to a school and get better test scores than the average student in your class, and like you have to have really good test scores from schools that don't perform well. And like it's really hard to get into this program
Yeah.
because these kids have to show leadership skills and like demonstrate like leadership in clubs that they do after school, and like a lot of these schools don't even have clubs.
Yeah.
Like there's no good way to demonstrate leadership in your classroom.
Yeah.
It's like really hard to get into this program because they make the standards impossible for kids that are coming out of the city schools.
Yeah. And it like, it's kind of like you're applying to a college. It's
Yeah.
like, that's like how advanced it is. And I feel like they make it hard so it's like unattainable, and I feel like that just sucks for the kids who want to apply to it, like because I feel like they think that they aren't doing well enough, or like if they don't have the resources or if they don't have the means, then like I feel like why have a scholarship like that? Like I feel like a scholarship should be accessible to people. Like you have to show like effort and like stuff like that, but I feel like when you make it that advanced, like it's not right. And for only like that few people from the community to have it, like that shows that there's a problem.
Yeah, and another thing that bothered me was that like if you really want to make a difference, you're not going to start your scholarship program for like 5th to 8th graders.
Yeah.
You should start it when they're in kindergarten, so that way they have a chance to actually succeed enough to
Yeah.
be at grade level or better when they're in 5th to 8th grade.
Yeah.
Like the city school that I researched is called Roosevelt School. It's a middle school, and it is like the worst performing school in the Philadelphia area. It received an F on the grading scale and a 1 out of 10 on the like best schools grading scale. And like they separate this kids into like who's performing at what level, and they call them colleges. And like there's the honors college, and then there's like Arcadia and like Penn State Abington and like all of these different schools, but like they separate them by like the ranking of the colleges. And so the kids that know that if they're in the like a not as good college, then they're like the stupid class,
Oh.
which is like so mean to treat children like that. And like to be like, oh, we're going to group all of the kids that aren't performing well together and not putting them in a class with their peers that are like performing at different levels is not a good way to get children to succeed. It's just like, oh, we're the stupid class, we're not going to do well.
Yeah. like that's just like incredibly demoralizing. And I feel like when you want like kids to succeed and like someone's not at grade level, you usually kind of pair them with someone who is at the grade level they should be, just kind of so they can see and like kind of that person can like push them, you know, like that's usually how it's done. Or you like have someone that'll help them like, you know, out and like helps them get to grade level. But like if you group them with a bunch of other people that aren't at grade level, then they all have like that attitude like that they aren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah. And like one of the things that the Wilmington like Great Oaks pre or orientation packet that they had to do online
Yeah.
was like talking about how like tutors also benefit significantly from tutoring. So like if you want the students that are above grade level or at grade level to do even better, then you have to pair them with students that aren't doing as well. So that way they can pull each other up together
Yeah.
because they both understand the material better when they're both learning and teaching it to each other.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the reasons why I like Great Oaks charter, because I like that. And I feel like that's a really good method, because if you are like at grade level but you want them to like exceed like succeed at another level, and then you have someone who is below grade level, I think pairing them together, like you have the one person explain it and like that helps them with their efficiency, and like the other one like learns more. So I feel like it's just a good way to pair. But like I don't know, like just that thought of having like students all in like the same class just like has like such a bad demeanor to me. Like I don't know, I think it's just incredibly demoralizing.
And like the teachers are separated by like the classes too, so or the colleges. So they like you have like the good teachers working in the honors classes, and then
uh,
not as great teachers working in the stupid class, for lack of a much better way to phrase that. But like you should like you're not giving the students the same opportunity because they're not learning from the same teachers, and
yeah.
like the teachers aren't prepared as well in other classes as they are for the honors kids.
Yeah. That's like awful, because I know in my sister's school, so she has it that each classroom has two teachers in it. So that way, like, you know, if there's one teacher who's like in the front, the other one can be like walking around and like answering questions or like giving out handouts. And so what they'll do, because like I was just observing with her in the school, like what they'll do is just like every morning, like before they like greet the students, they just kind of go through like the plan of what they want to do. And then like if a student has a problem or whatever, like they like meet with that student, they come up with a game plan. And it's always like they never they like my sister like ensures that like at least that all students like have a good teacher. Like my sister, because she's like the principal, she's like, I don't want a bad teacher in the school, because like I don't want my kids to like not learn or not succeed because like I hired someone who wasn't that good of a teacher. So like she provides like the same access to everyone. And I was there and like I was watching the teachers just like go through their like routines and just seeing how helpful they were. Like one student got in trouble because like with another student because like he was like getting into an argument, and instead of like kind of, because I feel like in some schools you'll see them like they immediately take them out of class and they like give them like a timeout or something. And what they did was just like if they weren't like kind of calming down, they like had to separate them to like make the situation like less volatile. But like they instead like made them write down like, okay, what happened? You write down what that person did, and then you write down what you did, and then you write down why you think they did it and why you reacted that way. Like they were able to understand someone else's actions and understand why they reacted that way and why the other person reacted. And it's like I feel like each teacher is like hold themselves accountable and make sure that each student gets the same type of attention, and like no one has a different thing unless like one student needs more help. But like it's not like separated like that, because I feel like everyone deserves like an equal opportunity.
Yeah. Um, Another thing that that's like one of the reasons why I absolutely love charter schools that like actually have a strong charter and are doing what they're saying they're doing,
Yeah.
because like I think it offers like such a good opportunity for students that wouldn't necessarily have those opportunities otherwise.
Yeah.
They like hire good teachers and stand for something important like Great Oaks with like tutoring students every day and giving them one-on-one attention that they need. Like that's something that I think is amazing. But one of the things that I didn't like about Germantown Friends again was that they like force all of the students to apply to college,
Mm-hmm.
and they like take like my high school did the same thing. I went to a college prep school, so like everyone had to apply to college. Like you didn't have a choice in like whether you wanted to go to like pastry arts school or something like that. Like you had to go to college,
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we get 100% admittance rate and we have a 100% matriculation rate and like all of this like really good statistics for the school, but like that's not necessarily what every student wants,
Yeah.
and it's not also something every student is prepared for.
Yeah.
Like my school was a college prep school, so like you knew going into it that you were going to college, but like these students that could be from the community, like the 17 community scholars, such a sad number and it makes me so mad. But
Yeah.
like those 17 students might not have the same like they're going to Germantown Friends because it's the best school in the community. They're not going because like they necessarily want to go to college or because like their parents are prepared to send them to college. Like they're not coming to this school with the $34,000 that they need to send their kids to high school a year. Like they're getting a significant scholarship to this school. Like who says that they're prepared to pay for a significant college education? And
Yeah.
like the schools that they listed as like their top enrollment were like UPenn and like NYU and like all of these like really expensive schools and like big name schools, which is good. But like not every student from Germantown is going to be able to afford a Brown education. Like
Yeah.
just not possible.
Yeah.
Which like is a totally different issue all on its own, that like education is not really achievable for all students. But like I don't know, it's like should we really be forcing that on students' faces? Like, oh well, this person's going to Brown, so you should achieve the same like grades and then not be able to go there because your
Yeah.
parents don't have a scholarship fund for you.
Yeah. I feel like it also like kind of sets up that like if you don't get into a college, like a good college, like it makes that thought like, oh, like I wasn't good enough. And I feel like it just sets up like that kind of low self-esteem thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know my sister's school, I don't think they force every kid to go to college, but I think they kind of, because they're all young, like they kind of just set that whole like, you know, you can go to college, like these are great colleges, like, you know, like a positive attitude about it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they like kind of force that idea. I think it's more so like you will be successful, like here are some successful schools and like people represent their colleges. But I don't think they are ever like, you have to apply. Because I feel like that just does set up a bad attitude. And I feel like it's better to be realistic. Like, that's one of the reasons why I got into teaching and why I always wanted to teach secondary education is because like I feel like it's important to tell students the realistic side of like going to college and like what they're going to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when you get into like middle school and high school, like you are focusing on your classes, which is important. But I feel like once you start thinking about college, like you have to be prepared for like how much money it's going to be. And like, you're kind of going to be independent and like all these things. And like, oh, you know, you're probably going to have to take out loans. Like, let's talk about that. Like, that's going to be something that if, you know, if you can't afford it and like you take out loans, like what does that mean for your future and like how much you have to work? So I feel like if kids like if they're forced to like oh like to go to college, then they're either going to like be forced to go into debt and then they're going to be like really like not depressed, but they're going to be like incredibly sad to like realize like they went to college, they had to go to college because they were forced to, and now they have all this money that they owe and like
I
they
mean, it's like a bitterness almost. It's not really like a depression. It's more just like
yeah that's
an
what
anger and a bitterness towards the people that forced you into that.
yeah yeah so I feel like there's it's just like a bitterness. So I don't know if like I would force like students to be like you have to go to all these like colleges and like you have to do this. I think, and especially like forcing you to go to the best schools, it's like yeah, if you want to you should, but like you also have to understand like you know school is what you make of it. And like you know especially when you get to college, like you know you do what you can. But like I feel like if you like because my school, I went to a college and it was actually pretty expensive, but it wasn't one of the best schools. I went to St. John's University and it wasn't one of the best schools, but it was still pretty expensive, but I still got a pretty good education. Or Queens College, which is a pretty good school, but it's not expensive, you know. So I feel
Yeah.
like
I went to Pitt because it's a state school for me. So like tuition was like half of what my sisters are paying at the schools that they went to. And like that just made the most sense to me to like go to a school that's still a good school, but like I'm not paying an arm and a leg just to get the same education that I could get anywhere else.
yeah, yeah. So I think I don't know. I think that's really interesting though that you realize like how much they force students, because that's something I never really thought about, like how much they do force students to like go to college, because it's like a double-edged sword, because it's a good thing, because it's like, oh, it gets them used to the idea of like succeeding and like getting their life, you know, but I think it also just kind of makes them feel like if they don't get into college, then they're like a failure.
And there's also that, like, if you're not ready to go to college, like, you don't know what you want to study, like,
Yeah.
it's one thing if you, like, don't know what you're studying your freshman year, but, like, if you seriously don't know what you want to do past that point, like, or past your sophomore year, like, you are just throwing money down the system, and you're going to be in school for, like, 7 years because you're trying to take all these classes, and none of them are for a major
Yeah.
that, like, you actually want. And then you might get a major that you didn't want and go out into the real world and be like, I don't want these jobs that come with this.
Yeah.
Like, and then there's just all of this anger and aggression built up towards this system that you didn't even want to get into.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting. I don't know. I really like doing the community walk because I learned a lot of stuff. And like, even though I go to Baltimore all the time and like I look at the community, it's just like when I look at the students that go to the school, it's like a lot of them come from different backgrounds, and a lot, because the way my sister phrased it is just like the school is like, I think 95% African American students. And she's like, a lot of these kids, like their families, their parents are either both working, or you know, or a lot of them don't have, like one of their parents is in jail and like they have to be with a guardian, or like, you know, or like child services has to be called. Like there's a lot of different situations, and I think looking at the community around like the schools, kind of just seeing that, it just like opened my eyes, because I'm like, I'm going to be teaching in a charter school, and like I would like to know what my students like lives are like, and like, you know, kind of the environment, like where would they go, and like what things are available for them, because like at least they have the park to play to, and like they can feel safe in the park because like the school's right there. And like they can take the bus, or like, you know, I know there have been some instances like if the parents didn't come pick them up and they didn't have money for the bus, like the teachers would drive them home, because like they didn't want their kids like walking by
That's
themselves.
actually really awesome.
Yeah, because like if they were young and like they, because sometimes what they'll do is if someone in the elementary school has a sibling in the middle school, they'll pair them. But if they don't have anyone, they'll drive them home, because they're like, we can't send one of our little ones outside, like especially if it's a dangerous neighborhood and like it's dark, they'll get lost, you know. So like they'll drop them off. And I just think looking at the community, you kind of see like either how much they support the school or how much like there is against the school.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about Germantown was that there are like no playgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And also like there was this, there used to be like a big playground, but they turned it into a Section 8 housing development for retired people and like the elderly. So it's like a senior citizen home now,
Yeah.
which like is a good thing to have in a community, but at the same time, like you're taking down a playground and like a park for
Yeah.
this. So like there's very little community space. And there was this like one tiny little community garden that I saw, and like it was super overgrown, and like it didn't look like anyone was taking care of it. And I was like, come on, guys, like let's make
Yeah.
it cool. Like let's actually do something with the city and like make it look like we're proud of it.
Yeah.
But
I
like
think,
kids don't go outside there. Like it's not uncommon for like I did my student interview while I was doing my community walk, but I went to the house that my dad owns that like has people in it that have been there for the past 6 years. And I interviewed like their youngest son who's in middle school, and I was talking to him, and his window looks outside to an abandoned church that is now like, it's like boarded up, but like people break in it all the time, and it's basically just like a crack house.
yeah.
And like his window looks directly inside that. And like he's a straight A honor roll student, but like he grows up in the worst possible setting, and like he shouldn't be succeeding, but his parents value education so much that like he knows that like when he gets home from school he does his homework. He's not allowed outside until he's done, and like he's not allowed to play on his computer or on like video games until he's finished his homework. And like he's a very passionate drawer and like artist too, and he knows he's like got to take school seriously so he can do something with that.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. But like when I asked him like, do you ever play outside, and he was like, not really, like we have a backyard and there's a pool back there, but we don't really go out there that often.
Yeah.
I was like, well, why not? And he was like, it's not a good neighborhood. And he said it
Yeah.
like kind of like shyly, and I was like, come on, like it's I don't know. It was sad.
Yeah, I feel like that's sad, especially because like you would think they would try to put at least more effort for the schools, especially like I feel like it's almost not a requirement, but it should be like when you have like a school, there should be at least like a playground or something that's around, so like the kids have something to do.
Yeah, the schools have like the daycares all have like a little tiny plot of land that they like have like one of those little Fisher Price like slides with the little ladders and
Yeah,
like a couple like bouncy balls and stuff like that. But like there really aren't like public playgrounds. Like unless
yeah,
you're inside the daycare, like you can't get access to the playground.
yeah.
And unless you're part of Germantown Friends, you are not allowed to be on their like super nice football field,
Oh wow.
which is like so
That
sad.
yeah, it is, and it's incredibly sad, and it kind of just like I don't know. I feel like it makes it so unsafe for them, and I feel like they'll just. I don't know. I feel like it's. I definitely think it should be a requirement because that way, like, at least kids are allowed to like kind of just be kids for a little while and just like play in the playground and feel part of their community. But if they're always just like going back home and they feel unsafe, like it's like they kind of become more reserved, you
Hmm.
know. So like seeing that is like I don't know. I would be incredibly sad, like to work in a school and like see how little opportunities there are for the kids, like just be kids and like feel safe. But I know like every neighborhood is different and like kids don't always feel safe because like of the background they're part of or like the people that live in their neighborhood. um which is why it's weird because like Baltimore, like where my sister teaches, like they all like understand like the kids shouldn't like be messed with, like they protect their kids, they protect their staff, but I feel like there's always like those like certain few that like just don't care.
Hmm.
um, but like at least they have like a really big playground and like the kids can play there and like things like that. But I definitely think that's like really I don't know, that's like really sad that like they don't have anything, and especially if like they have like that one small like little land and they can't even take care of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was also sad that like my choices were to go to Alany or to Germantown. Like those were the two neighborhoods that I was going to go to. And like I wanted to go to Germantown because I thought it would be better. Like it definitely has more of a multicultural like attitude about it. Like there's more diversity in terms of like race, religion, like ethnicity, spirituality. Like there's a more diversity in general there. But um Colony is like a predominantly African American community. Like it was built as like factory housing
Hmm.
back when factories were a big part of Philadelphia's like output. And so like they didn't think about safety regulations. They didn't think about like parks. They didn't think about like transportation. They were just like, oh, there's a factory here. We need as much housing here as possible. So
Yeah.
they just built them right on top of each other. And like they're like these tiny little houses all crammed into like a single block. And then the next block looks exactly like that. And like the train like cuts it off from the rest of the neighborhoods around it. So like if you're in Alany, you're stuck in Alany. And like so I was like, oh, I'll go to Germantown because like there's got to be parks and there's got to be playgrounds and there's got to be like something. And there
Yeah.
wasn't. And I was like, come on, Philadelphia. Like let's do a little bit better than this.
Yeah. But I think that like just shows you because it's like if you aren't part of like the main city, it's like how little is like kind of put into there. And then it also kind of just shows like how little they put into like education and like public education and things like that.
Because it's based off of property values.
Yeah. Because I know before my sister opened up her charter school, she taught at this other school, and they are not underperforming, but they're not doing as well as they should. And when she taught there, she was just like, you know, it wasn't just like there was no support within the staff. Like everyone just kind of just like didn't support another, they didn't care about their kids. And like that neighborhood, like they also had like a really big playground and all that stuff, but like there wasn't such a strong community there. And it's like the school kind of had to try to build their community, but like they didn't really try.
Hmm.
Like it just shows, and like that's the thing, like Baltimore is like such, honestly, like when you leave the inner harbor and like you don't go to like you go to certain places, it's like it's either really like cool cute restaurants and like really great food, and then it'll be like an abandoned like houses and like or there'll be like like Section 8 housing, like that's all there, and like, or like things will be closed off, and like it's not like, depending on where you are, it'll get like semi-safe to like not safe at all.
Yeah.
And it just like shows you like when you're not part of like the mainland, like where all the action is, like they don't really put a lot of attention there.
And like there's no money going into that area because they don't have like thriving businesses or like good entrepreneurship that like would take off and become like the next Starbucks or something like that. Like there's nothing there that like gives them the pride, like the sense of pride that would make them want to even leave that area and like get out of that situation and like, I don't know, better the situation than they started with.
Yeah. I mean, because I know like they'll take trips to like like the Inner Harbor, because there's like a science like factory and like this cool like exhibitions like for them to go to, and they love it. But like I think a lot of the time, I think it's like if the community doesn't rally together, like, so what my sister will do, they'll do like community things. So when she first opened up her school, she had like the first kids that came in, like she had all the family come in and like help paint in the school.
Oh wow.
They had the kids like be a part of it. And that way she's like, oh, everyone in the community is part of this building because they all helped make it. And I feel like, I don't know, like when I was looking into Wilmington and like Great Oaks, like I did like a Google map aerial view of it just to see what was around and like see what there was. And I saw there was like a YMC club and there was like a little park. And I know we're near like the lake or something,
Mm-hmm.
river. And I was like, okay, so it's like really scenic. So I feel like if anything, there's going to be like a lot of land for like kids to like walk through and like at least have some space for themselves.
Yeah, I went to Wilmington about like 2 months ago with my dad, just because we were in Delaware and we were like, oh, we'll just drive by. And so we drove by the school and we drove by like our housing options, and we drove by like the library, and there were like parks and kids playing, and like you would see like kids in their like camp t-shirts, and like it was just really encouraging to like be in a place that like there is a sense of community. Like
Yeah.
you can tell the kids are like active in the community, and like people are caring about the kids and like watching over them and making sure that they're safe and like getting the education that they need. And like I was also talking to my mentor teacher about like how the students performed last year, and she said that they jumped like 23 points on their reading level from her class, like from where they were in 5th grade and where they ended at the end of 6th grade. And I'm like, that is amazing. Like
Yeah.
the school is actually doing like really good stuff with the kids that they have, and I don't know, it was just really encouraging to hear all of that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I feel like community is like one of the most important things to have like a successful school, because I feel like it's one of those things, like I think parents a lot of time think that if they just send their kids to school, like that's it, they don't have to do anything else. But I feel like it takes both like the community and the school to work together to like create like a successful learning environment, because like you need to feel supported on all fronts. And if you like are learning in your school and you have great education, but when you leave, like you just don't feel supported at home, or like you don't have any like sources for you to kind of just go to and like feel like you have a sense of community, then it's like kind of hard to feel like that support.
And I think that's a problem that like is faced in all kinds of communities, like not just urban communities or like low income communities, because like I worked at a summer camp. I worked at 2 different summer camps in college. One was called Pine Valley, and it was like for urban kids, and like we took kids out of the city for the week and like introduced them to Jesus. It was it was like a weird, very Jesus freaky camp. But the other camp that I worked at was called Diamond Ridge, and we like it was in Bucks County, which is this like really nice, super ritzy part of Pennsylvania. And it was basically just like glorified babysitting, where we would take their kids on like high rope adventures. And like we did all this really cool stuff, but it was because the parents were like, well, if I have all this money, why am I spending time with my kids?
Yeah.
Like I can pay someone else to do it for me.
Yeah.
Like they can entertain my kids for all this money. I don't care. And like the parents would just like come pick them up, drop them off, and like didn't ask like, what did you do today? Like, did you have fun today? Like, what are you gonna do tomorrow? And like the kids would like the kids knew that their parents didn't care.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them like wouldn't even try to do certain things that were like challenging, because they were like, well, no one's gonna ask me like, did I challenge myself today?
Yeah.
And no one's gonna ask me like, did I overcome a fear today? Like they're just going to be like, oh, what'd you do? Okay, cool. And like not listen.
Yeah.
So like it's not just a problem that we face in urban schools. It's a kind of global issue. Like if
Yeah.
the community's not involved and like the parents don't care, like you're not going to succeed with our children.
Yeah. I think like that's a really true point because I feel like a lot of the time when people think of like urban schools, they are always like, oh, like it's really hard to have like a community supportive environment, but like that's something that'll happen in every school. Like it doesn't matter where you are, like if the parents are invested or if the community isn't invested, like it's just not going to be a successful environment, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like that's like just kind of a stereotype that follows urban youth, like urban like environments and urban youth. It's like, oh, like, you know, they're probably like not a successful learning environment. It's like, no, like, you know, it's like the same with every school. If you don't put in hard work and if you don't have like kind of a supportive environment, like it's just not going to succeed.
And like kids all start out with pretty much the same like you're not smarter just if you're born in a ritzier neighborhood. Like you're just given better opportunities usually.
Yeah.
So um like some parents like work their butts off all day and don't have the time to like come home to their kids and like help them with their homework because they work in an urban environment and they're working like 3 jobs or something. But the same issue might happen with kids in a nicer neighborhood where like their mom just goes and plays tennis at the country club while they're coming home from school and like doesn't care and doesn't help them with their homework. Like the kids could be given the same opportunities after school, but like one could have a private tutor to help them with their homework and the other one might not afford that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. That's why I really like the fact that there was like teaching and like tutoring, like working together at Great Oaks. Cause I was like, oh, teaching is really essential, but like having that one on one time, like you can ask all the questions you want and like focus on the specific thing that you're not really like understanding. Or if you are understanding, but like you kind of work a little bit harder on it, you know, like that way you have a tutor.
Or if you're like a mover, like you have to move around or like talk something out, like you're given the opportunity to like talk out an issue or move around the room and like express yourself physically while you're learning because like some kids just can't sit still and
Yeah.
like forcing them to sit still in a classroom is difficult when that's not how they learn.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of the things I learned like in college because like I was taking a course just like because there's like just kind of creating like like a diverse lesson because every student like learns differently and like some kids just like can't like retain like information that's just spoken to them like they have to have like a tangible object or like they have to like have it written on paper or like they need to like move around and like that way they can understand better and like I just think I feel like it's like important to understand like you know like you kind of have to create yourself you have to make yourself accessible for like all types of students and like you know if you're like working with the one like one-on-one with the kid and like they're moving around you have to be like okay that's fine like let's move around together like let's do this because like I get it like that's how you learn and that's fine you know.
Yeah. Or even just like working it with kids at camp. Like there were some kids that when they got upset, they couldn't sit still. And so
Mm-hmm.
we would go for a walk and we would talk about what was going on with them while we went for a walk. Because like I knew that if I forced them to sit still and sit like with their hands folded in their lap, they would only get more upset and more frustrated. But then
Yeah.
their anger wouldn't be towards the actual issue, it would be at me because I wasn't letting them express themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things I put in like when we had to do like that student interview and like create the questions. Like one of the things I wrote and I had to word it correctly. And I actually ran it by my nephew who's 13 years old and he's in middle school. So I ran it by him and I was like, do these all sound like questions like you'd be okay with like answering? And he's like, yeah. And like one of the things, because I have like anxiety and like all these things. And I'm like, I know kids like regardless of age, like are dealing with that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of the times they just don't know how to say it or like they're kind of too shy or like don't feel comfortable sharing like, oh, this is like when this happens, this is what needs to be done so I can feel better or like more comfortable. So like I wrote a question like, oh, if you know, like what like do you want me to like would you rather like me repeat like if you don't understand would you rather me to repeat it or would you want me to write it down on like a handout and give it to you like do you want to move around or if there's like a problem going on and like you don't want to talk about it would you want to like write it to me like do you is like there's something specific you want me to know like if you get flustered or like stressed like what's a way I can help you because I feel like a lot of the times teachers like kind of forget like their students kind of have their own like little world going on, and like there's a lot of stuff coming up, and if they get anxious and they get really jittery, like you have to know like, okay, we'll go for a walk because like that might help, or maybe they kind of just need to like sit and like not talk for 5 minutes and kind of like reel it down.
Yeah, I had a teacher in college who said that there was one student that she remembered teaching that had to move so much that she would like be like, "Oh, can you take this note to me down the hall to this room? I need to like communicate something with this teacher." And it would just be a note that said like, "Hey, this student needed to move, and I needed him out of the classroom so he can move. So can you just like nod your head, say yes, I understand, and like give me a message back that I'll just pretend I understand what you mean." And like they would just like send their students back and forth with to each other just to like under just to like help the student get out of the classroom and move around, like think about the lesson in an open space and just like not be in the classroom for a bit.
Yeah. I think that's just like really important. I don't know. So like that's like something I was thinking about when I was making my student surveys. I was just like, oh, kids have their own ideas and their own way. Like I kind of input that into the, like the lesson and stuff.
I also included in mine like medical conditions that I should be aware of.
Oh
Like I had really bad asthma growing up, and like
yeah.
I would have asthma attacks all the time in class, and my teachers would be like, "Stop it, you're being obnoxious." And I was like, "I can't breathe." Like, what do you want me to do? And like, yeah, I had a teacher that would throw me out of the classroom because I was disrupting her lesson. And I was like, okay, I mean, like, I get that, but like, you should be sending me to the nurse.
Yeah.
Not just sending me to the hallway.
That's so terrible. Oh my God. That must have been like that. I would have been like horrified. I would have been like, this is not good. I can't breathe and I'm also getting kicked out, you know?
Yeah. And she'd be like, come back when you can control yourself. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'll just reboot my lungs real quick. Like,
Yeah.
let me just hit the power off button. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's something like, I think it's something, I think most teachers ask, like, do you have any allergies? But I think if you ask, like, medical conditions, because I know in college, like, we had this girl who I think, like, we didn't know what it was and, like, we didn't ask, but, like, if she would faint a lot. And it would usually be, like, when she would get really stressed or she would, like, kind of start, like getting, like, uncontrollable tics. So if she wasn't fainting, she would get like uncontrollable tics, and so she would have to like kind of go outside the class. But like the teacher kind of asked her, like they were all like, "Oh, is there something you need to know?" And like she was like, "Yeah, just like sometimes I might like have like a little episode, and like I might have to step outside or anything. Like just know like I'm not trying to leave or anything. Like I just need to step outside." And so like that would be the case. And I feel like you have to kind of understand like, oh, like okay, now I know little Timmy has asthma, or like Jane like has like, you know, Tourette's, and like this might be like something we need to discuss, you know?
Or if it was just like a bee allergy, like then I know not to open the windows or like make sure that there's screens in the windows, and
Yeah.
or like a latex allergy and you know not to like blow up balloons because latex allergies are really severe.
Yeah.
And or like I don't know, like seizure disorder or something. Like they're not all like grand mal seizures, so they're not like the Hollywood like foaming at the mouth, shaking on the ground. Like some kids just like black out and wake
Yeah.
back up, and like you don't even realize that they're doing it. You'd think they're just staring off into space, and you're like, oh wait, you just had a seizure, and I need to do something about that.
So I feel like that's one of the important things to know, because when I made the questions, it was kind of more so like I framed it like what I wish like my teachers kind of asked me when I was in like school. And then I kind of thought like, oh, like what's like I looked at like kind of the world today and like what's going on. I'm like, okay, like let me think about like the main issues that are going on. Like what are things like that kids would feel like they need to talk about. And so because I know it like we're gonna do middle school, and like I kind of framed it like for middle school and high school.
Hmm.
Like I think that's like the age we got, like 12 to 21.
Yeah.
I also asked because I know that like people have like different pronouns that they use for themselves. I'm like, oh, is there something else you like? Do you have a nickname?
Oh, that's a really good question. Yeah.
Or, like, is there a pronoun that you prefer to use, or like not prefer, but like, is there a pronoun you use? Because like I feel like now, like kids and like people in general, like becoming more comfortable, like going outside like the binary and being like, oh, I prefer to be called they, or like oh, I don't like my name, like I don't have a good attachment to it, I would rather be called this.
Yeah.
And I felt like, oh, that's like,
Especially because high school is such a, and middle school is such a like experimental time in your life. Like you're still figuring out who you are. Like that's a really good way to ask who you think you are at that point without like coming out and saying like, I want to know where you stand in the gender binary. Like,
yeah, yeah, because I feel like, oh, like, what do you want to, because like I think if you phrase it like, what would you like for me to call you? Is there something, would you rather me call you they or like zay or like, so I felt like that was something. And then I kind of was just like, oh, is there anything else you want me to know? And I just feel like, because a lot of times students are still like kind of just shy and don't want to say things. So I felt like, oh, if they just answer this, they'll tell me. And if like there's something else they don't want to talk about, they can tell me at the end of class, and like I'll make a note of it if it's something they want me to keep in mind, or like to make like more of an inclusive environment and things like that.
yeah, one of the things that I included on my interview too was like, how do you feel encouraged best?
Mm-hmm.
Because like one of the things that I wish my teacher, like not all students like the like classroom praise, like look who got 100. Like
Yeah.
that makes some students feel absolutely awful. Like I had a friend who would purposely get one question wrong on every test in fifth grade because my teacher would list off the 100 and better club, because there was all the extra credit on our tests. So she would purposely get a 95 on every single test because she didn't want to be part of the 100 or better club.
Yeah. That's an excellent question though. Cause like I actually always get like physically uncomfortable when like I'm praised in public, because I get very
Hmm.
uncomfortable because I'm like, this is unnecessary attention towards me. Like I don't need it.
Yeah.
Let's focus on someone else. So like that's actually an excellent question. Because I feel like a lot of students love it, but like some students like me would have been like, this is uncomfortable. I'd rather not.
This is the worst day of my life. I'm never doing anything good ever again.
Like I don't wanna, and I think that's also like kind of some with like people who have like social anxiety, like that's also like an important question for them, because like if like, oh, like attention towards them, like they don't want it, like you kind of have to work with that.
Hmm.
I feel like that's a really good question, because I think a lot of the times like teachers want to be really supportive and be like, look, you did such an awesome job, this was great, but a lot of the like people like who don't like that attention, they'll just be like this is too much for me, like now people are looking at me and like now I feel uncomfortable. So I
And
think,
even if it's just like an improvement thing, like some students don't want people to know like they weren't doing well and now they're doing well.
yeah,
Like they don't, like that's something that they should be able to tell you, like I don't feel comfortable with you saying in front of everyone, like look who's the most improved.
yeah, yeah. So I feel like that's a really good question. Um, and I think, let me see, I asked that, and then because I know, because I remember in high school, like I started like getting more anxiety, and I remember like kind of reading books, then I was just like, I don't feel represented in this. So like I just like asked like, what are books you like what do you like to see in books? Like I feel like kids at least like to read something or something. So I read a bunch of books about like people who are anxious, or let's see, I read a lot of books, like I read this book like about like a a queer romance. It was like a teen romance. I was like, look, I presented it in the I feel like what kind of books you like the discussion, but also like what specific kind of book you want to talk about.
Yeah. Um, I always thought it was important to like read characters that I thought were real.
Yeah.
Like I love fiction books, but at the same time I don't like fantasy because I'm like that's not real. It's not ever gonna come true. Like science fiction is a waste of my time. Um, so like I like books that are like historical fiction where it's like this person could have existed. I'm glad they didn't because their life went to shit and like they finally had to like bring it back at the end. But like it's good to know that like I'm not reading something that someone just like made up off the top of their head. Like this could have been a real person.
Yeah.
Um, and like even if I don't relate to it specifically, knowing that they could have been real like is enough for me to be like, oh yeah, like this is actually something that's worth my attention and like my time to like sit down and read because like it's not something that someone just like pulled out of thin air and was like, oh yeah, this is this is what you should read now because I wrote it and I'm brilliant.
Yeah. I think that's like one of those things. I think incorporating just like different types of like novels just at least makes it more accessible, because I think it's like if you teach like students like they're all the same and they're all going to enjoy the same thing, like it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So I feel like just like making it more a diverse collection. And like, so when I took one of my English courses in high school, like we did a bunch of like the typical like, oh, Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby and like the very like, things you always had to read. But then my teacher like incorporated books that weren't as known, and like he did one from Shakespeare, and then he did like a really like funny like satirical kind of book, and then like taught us about like, oh, the different types of things. And like everyone loved that, because like we were reading something that wasn't like the generic kind of, oh, like we have to read this again, or like we know about this, or like I think either like using different examples. So like instead of doing like Romeo and Juliet when you have to do Shakespeare, maybe do another different play, because there are other plays that he has written.
Romeo and Juliet isn't even that like good of a story.
It is my least favorite play. And honestly, a lot of kids are like, I want this kind of love. And it's like, no, you don't. They died. I don't think that's a good message for anyone.
They
And
knew each other for 3 days.
look at
They were not in love.
like, so look at this. Let's not, this is his, that is his, that is my least fit. And like, I took a Shakespeare course in college. Like I took 2 of them, and we had to go around the class and say what was our favorite like play by Shakespeare. And like half the class was like Romeo and Juliet. And like my professor like saw me roll my eyes, and he was like, what's happening? And I was like, I'm sorry guys. Like I just hate that play. They knew each other for 3 years. Call me a realist, but I don't think you can love someone in 3 days and then like commit your life to them. And I was like, and I was like, broaden like your views on like plays and like read other things. So I feel like you have to like go through the classics, but then you also should like look at other kind of things,
Like Othello, like even just something that's like still Shakespeare, but like has such a good story to it.
That is a great story. I loved Othello. I thought that was a really good play. That and like my favorite, which isn't his like well known, was Titus Andronicus. And it's just like reading that play or like reading Othello like had such a good message, and like it showed like the symbolism, like the way like Iago would speak, and the fact like that they would use multiple S's, and like all this kind of information that was in it, and like you could create your own idea behind it. Like I don't know, I feel like when you remove yourself from the classics and go outside, like kids have more of a chance to like kind of create their own like ideas and see like a different perspective to things.
Yeah, it also just like shows them that there's more out there than like the classics. Like because like not everyone, like you said, like not everyone wants to sit in high school like reading Catcher in the Rye and The Great Gatsby, and like you have to shake it up a little bit to make it not be a book like, oh, we have to read this. It's like, oh, this is a new story that we get to explore together.
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like that's just like one of those things that I would definitely want in like my classroom. Just like a variety would be like the best thing for it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
All right, well, I'm gonna stop recording because
That's
we kind of went off topic a little bit.
it's fine.